A highly critical review of organisations controlled by Auckland Council paints a picture of dysfunction and a lack of accountability. The 5 so-called CCOs, Auckland Transport, Pānuku, Watercare, Auckland Tourism Events and Economic Development and Facilities Auckland, account for 2/3 of the council's services and assets and suck up about half of its operational budget. The $800,000 independent report that took 6 months makes 64 recommendations, including merging 2 of its events organisations to save $67 million over the next decade. It also found no clear strategic direction for council-controlled organisations, a lack of collaboration, duplicated services and poor and patchy information flow. Mayor Phil Goff, who promised the review as part of his 2019 re-election campaign, joins me now. Kia ora, Mr. Goff.
Kia ora, Lisa.
This kind of reads like a bit of a schmozzle, is it?
Oh, I think you're being a little bit tough. I heard you earlier in the afternoon mention the word dysfunction, so I did a quick electronic check of what the report said. The word dysfunction doesn't appear anywhere, but I don't want to be defensive about it. I set the report up, and I promised it last May, because I believe that there are need for improvements in the relationships between the council and the CCOs and a greater degree of accountability, and that requires changes both by council and the CCOs. I didn't want to whitewash. I wanted a free and frank commentary, and that's what I got from 3 very capable people with a huge amount of experience in the area of organisational reform. I think this report's a really good foundation for going forward and making the improvements that I wanted to see.
It does paint a picture of dysfunction, though, doesn't it? Because they say there's no strategic direction for these organisations. There's a lack of collaboration. There is poor communication. There is duplication of services. And they point out the fact that there's, with AT, far from satisfactory in terms of the collaboration in the relationship, and no input from council in terms of Watercare, in terms of setting long-term prices. So that doesn't sound like it's operating really well.
Well, if you read the report, and I just refer you to page 3, for example, where they say that no one should think that there's not plenty of successes. There are, and they're outlined in the report as well.
But you're wanting to fix what's wrong, though, aren't you?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I don't want a report to say everything's fine. If it said everything was fine, I would have wasted my time and your money in setting up the review. I wanted to find ways in which we could focus on getting a better relationship, which, as you pointed out quite properly, the CCOs spend half of our operational budget and they represent 2/3 of our assets. So I got what I was looking for from the report. I don't make the decisions about adopting the recommendations. That's made by the council governing body as a whole. But I'd be very surprised, given the competency and the professionalism of this report, that councillors weren't ready to adopt some of those key recommendations. And over the next fortnight, we'll be examining through workshops those recommendations in detail. And I would hope that as early as the end of this month, we would make some key decisions on some of those recommendations to get the improvements that I want.
So what responsibility do you and the rest of the councillors take for this situation? Because some of the things, like clear strategic direction, are supposed to be coming from the top, and that's you, isn't it?
Yeah, I think we've all got to take responsibility for this, the CCOs, myself, the executive leadership team at Council and councillors themselves. But I'm not interested in a blame game to say, look, it's their fault, it's not my fault. I'm interested in getting the improvements that I believe Aucklanders actually want. And we've started down that track already. If I use Watercare as an example, what I found with Watercare early on was that there was it operated reasonably well operationally. It produced the best water standards in the country and the best standard of treated effluent. But they really wanted, the sense that I got was that they really wanted to keep council out of interference in their affairs. Well, that's changed, and I've developed a relationship with the board, the chair board of Watercare, to make sure that we have a joined-up approach, and we really need that, and that's demonstrated by the fact that, as a result of a 1 in 200-year drought, we are facing challenges with water resilience, and we need to improve our strategic development in that area. So those changes are already partly underway, and what this review basically does is confirm that the concerns that I had in this area were absolutely justified, and that we need to make change, and there will be change.
So in terms of those face-to-face relationships, how often do you visit these CCOs? How often do you go into the building? Because this report is recommending that you spend at least, half a day at each of them in a year. So when was the last time you visited all 5 of them and spent half a day?
I've just come off a phone call from the chair of the Watercare board, and I would have been on the phone to her 2 or 3 times a week at least.
No, but this is a visit,
month.
Isn't it? The recommendation is that you actually go there.
Yeah. It doesn't matter whether it's a physical visit or a communication, or they come and see us. I've visited all of the CCOs, and I meet with them quite regularly. And I guess what you won't read in a report, because it's not a structural thing, it's more building the relationships. The changes that I've made and the appointments that we have made, both at the board chair level and the CEO level of the CCOs, has considerably improved the relationships and the meaningful nature of the relationships that I can have with the governance bodies for the CCOs. And that's where my relationship properly lies. Not so much with the CEOs, although I meet with them regularly as well, but with the chair of the board. We've made changes to the makeup of the board, we've made changes to the chairs of the board, and in fact we've made changes to the CEOs as well, and there'll be more to come.
We're almost out of time, but I want to talk to you about the stadiums, 4 of them. This report says we can't really afford them. So what, are you going to ditch one, sell it off, build some houses on it maybe?
I think what the report has said is right, and it confirms the discussions that I've had with different groups. Look, we need $350 million of work done on Mount Smart. Mount Eden needs $500 to $800 million worth. Western Springs, $80 million worth. If we set up a new stadium, it would be $1 to $2 billion. We don't have money to throw at duplication of facilities. And what this report says about the need for the council stadiums to work closely with the Eden Park Trust Board is absolutely right. And I've started discussions with the chair of the Eden Park Trust Board and discussions with the government as to taking over the appointment of the members of the board from central government. They appoint 5, that's more than half of the board members. They don't put money into it, we put money into it. It's in our city.
So will you get rid of any of those assets? Get rid of any of them?
If you ask me the question, are we going to spend money on each of those assets? No, we simply don't have that money. What we've been doing is talking to some of the major.
So will you get rid of one of them? Consolidate then, one or more of them?
I think it's extremely unlikely, for example, that we're going to spend $350 million in upgrading Mount Smart Stadium when the Warriors could easily play at Eden Park, and the Warriors chief executive, I think, is coming around to that way of thinking. We've had people working as mediators with the different sporting organisations, sometimes hard to corral them all together and to get agreement, but those discussions are starting or have started and are proving fruitful.
So let me put it another way. Is the life of some of those stadiums coming to an end as far as the council is concerned?
Yeah, look, stadiums don't make money, they cost money, and if we can have all of the major sporting codes playing on rectangular fields, playing on the one field, that would, and making sure that was at optimal standards, that would be better than trying to spread your money over 3 or 4 different stadia. That doesn't make sense to me.
Yes or no, sell some of them?
We will be bringing them together to operate to the extent that we can out of one stadium rather than all of them.
So sitting on the fence with that one. Thanks, Phil Goff. That is the Mayor of Auckland, Phil Goff, joining us there to talk about a report that was issued today into the council-controlled organisations.